Good morning. Hope you're doing well today, and I hope you're having a pleasant weekend. I want to share with you something this morning that's been on my heart for quite some time. As most of you know, 2 weeks ago, a report was released concerning the Southern Baptist Convention and its response to various instances and reports of abuse within our congregation, some involving teenagers, some involving children. What many of you may not know is this is nothing new. This started to come to light at least as far back as 2006 when a woman named Krista Brown, who had grown up in a Southern Baptist church in Texas and had been abused as a teenage girl by a minister in her church, began campaigning for the SBC to become involved in this issue. Historically, you've always had at least an occasional case, thankfully not very many, but every once in a while a pastor or other minister would be found to have engaged in what we would call today sexual misconduct. This would range from, on one end, a minister who might make a pass at someone, to the other extreme where a minister has raped a woman or molested a child. What should have been the proper response was a phone call to the police, and that did happen on occasion. However, what happened all too often was the pastor was allowed to quietly resign and seek out another church. Generally speaking, when that pastor was being considered by a new congregation, no one would warn them of what had happened at the previous church. This, in my view, is the greatest weakness of our autonomous system. There is no central control over which pastors go into which church. Denominations such as the Methodist or the Catholic Church assign their pastors to a specific congregation. Others, such as the Episcopal Church, the denomination has veto authority over who goes where. Not so in Southern Baptist churches. When a church finds itself in need of a pastor, they typically form a search committee that will solicit resumes, interview candidates, contact references, and so forth, and eventually make a recommendation to the congregations, which then vote on whether or not to accept that person as their pastor. If an SBC church calls someone that it feels is not appropriate for whatever reason, the SBC cannot remove that pastor from that church. All we can do is inform the church in question as to what our concerns are, and if they insist on keeping this pastor, we can end the relationship that we have with that church, and they're no longer considered a Southern Baptist church. This is called disfellowshipping a congregation, and I know the Florida Baptist Convention had to do this a few months ago. What has been proposed in times past is the creation of a database of ministers that are known abusers, whether it be because they were convicted by the courts, whether they have confessed, or whether there is a significant amount of evidence that existed that pointed to their guilt. This database could be accessed by churches and search committees to help verify a given pastor's character. However, when this was proposed back about 10 or 15 years ago, it was blocked by the convention leadership on the grounds that it violated church autonomy. And that's ridiculous. There is no reason why the Southern Baptist Convention could not maintain such a list and make it available for any SBC church, association, state convention, or agency to verify that a given person has a clean history. Why do I say there's no reason why they can't do this? Because apparently they have been keeping just such a list. They just didn't want anyone to know about it. If you look elsewhere on the internet, you can find the list, or if you like, shoot me a message and I can send you a copy. And you'll find on there not only a list of names, but there's other relevant information as well. So not only did the Southern Baptist Convention leaders know all of this was going on, they refused to take any action to protect our churches and our children. Not only that, but when abuse survivors have tried to call attention to this issue, SBC leaders have engaged in smear campaigns, calling these people opportunists and tools of Satan. I am absolutely appalled at the reaction of our Southern Baptist Convention leadership in regards to this. This past year, Southern Baptist messengers voted to ask a third party to conduct a review of this whole situation, cases of abuse within the SBC, and the SBC's reaction to them. They're also tasked with making some recommendations. One of them, the big one in my view, is the creation of a sex offender database, essentially the same thing that has been proposed before. Any pastor who has been convicted by a court of law, confessed to abuse, or is credibly accused, which means the evidence strongly suggests they are indeed guilty, would be added to this list. Some have objected on the grounds that an innocent pastor could have their careers ruined by such a move. The proposal that I have seen requires that any pastor that has been accused will have a chance to respond to any accusation and present evidence in their defense. So I cannot discount this possibility altogether if the database is properly administered, and I will admit that is a legitimate concern, but assuming the database is properly administered, the chances of that happening are extremely slim. I don't know exactly what will be voted on next week in Anaheim, but if this database proposal comes for a vote, I would urge all messengers to vote yes, create the database. This is a tool that is needed in today's world where wolves in sheep's clothing are a real concern for churches everywhere. There's a lot more that I can say that I want to say about the state of the Southern Baptist Convention, but I want to wait until after next week's meetings before diving into that. So let me just encourage everyone, if you're watching this, if you're going to be in Anaheim, let me encourage you to vote yes for any database proposal that might come up. And let's be in prayer for everyone in Anaheim that God's will is done, that God is glorified, and that our churches and most of all our children are protected. God bless and have a wonderful day.